joining us now to give us a sense of what's happening with this young, she's very, very attractive, very energetic, did this campaign on a shoestring, supported by some Bernie PACs, but didn't spend a lot of money. This young woman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, beats Joe Crowley, the number 4 in charge in the House of Reps for the Democrats. And what does this mean for the future of the Democrat Party? Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, joins us now. And, of course, Newt knows a little bit about this, knows a little bit about political trends. And he's the author of the new book, Trump's America, which is a huge smash bestseller. It's also featured on our Facebook page. Newt, great to talk to you. How are you?
I'm doing great. And, of course, what you're watching is the radicalization of the Democratic Party as it moves from being liberal to being genuinely socialist and committed to no borders, committed to abolishing the people who protect the border, committed to a whole series of radical policies, committed to eliminating all private health care. It's pretty amazing to watch. And the victory in New York is just one more in a series of radical victories in Democratic primaries where more and more people, the woman who won in New York is a member of the Democratic Socialist of America. So she makes no bones about it. She is a genuine socialist. And I think this will be one of the great debates in American history between those of us who believe in freedom and prosperity and those people who believe in government-imposed bureaucratic rule of our lives.
It also is it's a textbook case, I think, in examining what happens to American communities where we see a massive demographic shift through immigration, where we also have public schools that don't teach the greatness of America, American history, tradition, our founding. And so she's able to win in a Queens, which, obviously decades ago was pretty much a blue-collar working class, lots of immigrants, Polish, Italian, but it was fairly conservative on social issues and so forth. But over the years, Queens and the boroughs of New York changed over time. And you're seeing this in Virginia, Newt. You're seeing this in formerly blue-collar conservative areas of northern Virginia, not right around Washington, but I'm talking about Manassas and so forth. Wild changes in voting patterns because of the type of immigration that we've decided to allow.
Well, you have two different things going on. You have, of course, the impact of a substantial number of people who are new to America and who believe in a government redistribution of wealth and government control of lives. And then second, you have schools that not only don't teach American history, they don't teach anything.
Right.
13% of the 8th graders in Baltimore could pass a basic math test. 87% could not. So you're getting voters now who know nothing. I mean, it's
economics, nothing.
In some of these districts, and of course the changes, how do you have a dialogue with somebody who knows no history, doesn't know how to read and write, and basically would like you to take care of them? And I think that's a big part of the fight you're about to see is the folks who are very happy to take money from others in order to have government run things, and the people who think that that's the road to Venezuela and Cuba and Zimbabwe and places that have just clearly failed, because socialism in the end kills the economy, destroys the ability to deliver goods and services, and creates crises.
Yeah, well, I think the energy in the Democrat Party is clearly on the far left. I mean, that's why it was always going to be problematic for them in 2016 when they treated Bernie like they treated him, and they were jamming through a Wall Street favored candidate when, again, the energy in the Democrat Party, you saw that at the rallies, was really more with the socialist. And now we have another socialist who wins in New York, and the old guard perhaps is shaken. And you've seen people like Cory Booker, dude. Remember Cory Booker 20 years ago, 15 years ago? People thought he was like the young, kind of moderate, he was a young, moderate Democrat. And now he's moved farther and farther left.
Look, if you're not a radical, you don't have a future in the Democratic Party. And you see this, I'm working on a paper right now on the Senate Democratic immigration bill, which is just an absolute total disaster. Every single incumbent Democrat co-sponsored this Democratic immigration bill, which is an open borders bill. It basically sets up a set of rules by which people could come into the U.S. and you could not stop them. Now, this is at a time when there are well over 100 million people worldwide who have indicated to Gallup that they would like to come to the U.S. So I don't see how any of the Democrats running for re-election this fall, all of whom co-sponsored the Feinstein open borders bill, I don't see how they're going to be able to go back home and survive with that kind of an immigration policy.
Yeah, I think that again, in looking at where we are here on the Republican side, I mean, you had a bill written by Bob Goodlatte on immigration that the president agreed to, signed off on. They were told everyone was told it was dead in the water. It gets 193 votes. I guess it only needed 208 ultimately, but they got 193 votes. Could have passed if they had really whipped the votes for it. And now they're back at a new bill that is amnesty for 2 million people and expands chain migration categories from the Goodlatte bill, the first Goodlatte bill, and it's a starkly different bill. And I feel like the kind of Chamber of Commerce Republicans who didn't want Trump to be president in the first place really won out in this so-called immigration compromise. And I've got it for the life of me, I don't understand why the administrations went along with this. But apparently they're going to vote on this tomorrow. Is that right? Yeah, tomorrow it looks like.
Well, I think they're sort of desperate to get a yes vote for something, to send it to the Senate where, frankly, either nothing will happen or it'll get worse. But if you look at where the country is, you saw this a little bit in this whole fight about children crossing the border, where it turned out that by a very substantial majority, the American people blamed the parents, not the U.S. government. I mean, people aren't stupid. And I think if you look at what's happening in Europe, where Austria, Hungary, Slovenia, Italy, Poland, all these countries are now saying that the Merkel open border model is not going to work, that they're frankly going to close down the borders dramatically. And in fact, they're talking about establishing amnesty centers outside the country, that if you're going to apply as a refugee, you never even get into the country. You have to apply outside the country, or you're automatically expelled. And that's just because everyday common sense people realize people are gaming the system. This new the probable Mexican president who says that immigration is a human right does not apply to Mexico. I mean, I would say terrific. If you think immigration is a human right, we have several 100,000 people from Central America who you can accept in Mexico. He won't accept a single one of them. I mean, the level of hypocrisy that we're dealing with on these issues is astonishing, and I think the average American knows that, and I think it's going to end up being a radical Democratic Party will isolate itself from most Americans. By the way, you're seeing this happen in Minnesota, where there's a pretty good chance Keith Ellison, one of the most radical Democrats, is going to end up as the nominee for Attorney General, and he will probably take virtually the entire ticket down to defeat, because while he can win in Minneapolis, the rest of the state's not like Minneapolis. The rest of the state doesn't believe in radical socialist solutions, which are, by the way, of course, not solutions. They're failures.
Mm-hmm. No, and we've seen what this means. I mean, we've seen how it ends up. I mean, everyone's always upset about Trump's taking on the global trading system. Well, from 2000 to 2008, when China became a member of the WTO, we lost 5 million manufacturing jobs in the United States. 5 million. And I mean, there's never any stories. I mean, where's the media outrage about that? I mean, there's never any stories about, okay, this is what happened to the American manufacturing class. And now Trump's trying to do something about it, and I think he's getting an enormous amount of pushback from the same people who didn't want him to be president in the first place. And so now they're doing a big conference call, I guess, with Mnuchin this morning to explain why they decided to back off on some of these ideas they had about China buying our tech companies. So now they're going to be able to invest at least 25% in American technology companies, which, again, that's how we got into this IP problem in the first place, intellectual property theft. And a lot of people seeing this as capitulation by the president. I know you probably aren't immersed in that particular issue, but I'd love your thoughts on it.
Well, look, I think we are inevitably going to have to get tougher and tougher and tougher with China, because the Chinese have spent over 20 years, as you point out, from the time they first joined the World Trade Organization, which people thought would lead them to follow a rules-based system. They've simply exploited every opportunity. Obama's Director of National Intelligence said in 2015 that the Chinese had stolen that year $460 billion of intellectual property. And while this makes the New York investor class very worried, and it makes some of the Silicon Valley guys very worried, the truth is, for national security reasons, we're going to have to tighten up our economy, and we're going to have to stop the Chinese from coming in and raiding us. And in some cases, we're going to have to apply to the Chinese the same ground rules they apply to us. I mean, if they don't allow Facebook or Google to have open access in China, maybe we should apply the same ground rule to the Chinese internet companies and say, fine, we're going to treat you exactly the way you treat us. And I think we have to be much tougher, and we're not going to have any choice. They are our only major peer competitor in the world. They are serious about being able to defeat us. They say it openly, and they openly say they have a strategy to replace us as the dominant economy in the world. And a large part of that strategy involves stealing our intellectual property and cheating on agreements.
Newt Gingrich, one final question on the threats to White House officials, people supporting the president in public, driving them out of public places. Now Stephen Miller's apartment was surrounded 2 nights ago with protesters, wanted posters dropped all over his neighborhood. Final thoughts on how frightening that is?
Yeah, we should apply the full force of the law. If somebody says certain things, it's called assault. They should call the police every single time. We have got to establish the principle that we are not going to allow thugs, the equivalent of the brown shirts of the 1930s. These are left-wing totalitarians who would drive the rest of us out of public life so they could dominate our country, and we cannot afford to give them an inch.
Newt Gingrich, it's always great to talk to you. Thanks so much, and I hope you come on TV soon.